a devastating nationwide catastrophe during this period. They would never believe that this was an era the Chinese government hailed as an unprecedented golden age. In 2024, the National Bureau of Statistics claimed that the birth rate saw a brief rebound, reaching 9.55 million newborns, an increase of 520,000 from 2023. This trend aligns with marriage statistics. In 2023, there was a surge of calculated love-struck individuals who rushed into marriage and immediately conceived. By 2024, they gave birth to their babies, believing that having a child in the year of the dragon would bring good fortune. However, this was a one-time effect. By 2024, the number of marriages experienced an unprecedented freefall, meaning that the birth numbers will undoubtedly nosedive after 2025. At the same time, those born in the 1980s have lost a significant demographic group capable of having second or third children have now mostly crossed the age of 40. They are increasingly unable to conceive. The responsibility for childbirth has now entirely shifted to those born in the 1990s and the 2000s. If young people refuse to get married or have children, birth rate will continue to plummet. No matter how desperately the National Bureau of Statistics manipulates the numbers, births will likely drop to around 8 million in 2025 and fall further to 7 million in 2026. Meanwhile, China has already fully entered an aging society. Additionally, with the National Healthcare Security Administration pushing people to consume substandard medications and ineffective traditional Chinese medicine, mortality rates will inevitably rise. As a result, China's total population will shrink rapidly. Over the past 3 years, China's annual population decline has averaged around 2 million. By 2026, the annual population reduction could surpass 6 million, the equivalent of wiping out an entire medium-sized city. The key question is, why are young people today refusing to get married and have children? Here we can explore both society and social psychology of economic factors. From a social psychology perspective, when people anticipate a disastrous future, they naturally stop marrying and refuse to conserve resources and prepare for uncertainty. This behavior is not unique to humans. It also occurs in the animal kingdom. For example, when African animals face prolonged drought, they stop mating because they are young and weak and allocate the limited resources to the strongest individuals to endure the harsh conditions. Similarly, young Chinese people, marriage and reproduction reflects the collective instinct to prepare for an impending crisis. Although only a small fraction of China's 1.4 billion people fully understand the government's intentional economic suppression policies, and even fewer grasp the concept of social repression, most people intuitively sense that the country is heading toward a severe societal disaster. Bringing a new life into this environment is an unbearable risk, so they choose to be single and a child is living with no attachment. The economy is the reasoning is even more compelling. The younger generation can barely support themselves, and let alone the next generation. According to a Yan Zhaopin annual graduate employment report, in 2019, the year before COVID lockdown, the average monthly salary for college graduates was 5,330 yuan, and that income left even renting an apartment 2 hours away from work cost at least 1,000 yuan, with another 1,000 yuan spent on transportation, 2,000 yuan on food, and 1,000 yuan on utilities and phone bills. This left nothing for dating or marriage. Buying clothes or cosmetics required asking parents for money, making it impossible to afford a wedding, let alone raising a child. Since 2019, young people's economic situation has worsened. The government even stopped releasing youth and employment data after June 2023, when it hit 21.3%. Later, the National Bureau of Statistics fabricated good economic data, claiming that by the end of 2024, unemployment rate was just 50.7%. A figure achieved by counting anyone who live streamed for 2 hours a week as is fully employed. In summary, young Chinese people rejecting marriage and childbirth as a natural consequences of both economic hardship and a subconscious response to a booming crisis. The once child-loving Chinese population is now are voluntarily heading towards self-extinction, the historical achievements of China's government. It remains uncertain whether any nation will follow suit, but it is certainly an unprecedented phenomenon. Thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please like and drop a comment below and hit the subscribe button right immediately. It really helps you to suggest my videos to others. I'll be back with more content soon. Until then,
Straight, nothing at all, nothing of that. It was, is us, development. Oh, I was having no movement. Oh, Jamaica, no movement. Oh, Europe, you government, no movement. Oh, prison, you city.